Okay.
Okay, got the recording. So today we've got Peggy Dyer going to talk to us about daylilies. And Miss Peggy has been a master gardener since 2005, I believe. So she is an expert in many things. She loves daylilies. I've seen some pictures of beautiful hostas in her garden as well. She had to move a few years back and transplanted and replaced a whole bunch of her prized possessions. I'm sure she would love to send you some pictures of her garden. She especially loves daylilies, and we just talked this morning. I've got a Miss Mary that started popping open yesterday, and she's got a Stella that just started opening this morning. So we're at the very beginning of our season here. So Miss Peggy, if you'd like to start, and we will sit back and enjoy.
Oh, I'm so excited, Beverly, learning all this new technology, plus the chance to share my love for this beautiful plant. Daylilies are so special to me. But good morning to all of the people out there in Zoom land. I'm excited about learning even more about daylilies and certainly more about Zoom. I consider it a good omen that my first daylily bloomed today, my little Stella out in the front yard. So I hope you're all settled in. I have my cup of tea in case I lose my voice from talking. Grab you a cup of coffee and get settled in, and do bring a pencil and paper because I'm hoping that you will find a daylily that you just can't live without. You want to add to your garden. Let's start with these two, Possum Holla Mammy and Possum Holla Pappy. I mean, that name just makes you smile. It does me. And I guess there's even more special because over in Middle Tennessee, I really had grandparents that we called Mammy and Pappy. I bet you don't hear that much anymore, but that makes me love these two daylilies even more. So again, let's see if I can get acclimated here and know what I'm doing. Again, my name is Peggy Dyer, and I can't deny it. I am a bona fide certified hemerocallis addict. Now, before you laugh too hard, I consider this a good addiction. And if I do my job right today, before you press that leave button, you're going to join me in this lovely daylily addiction. That's my earnest wish today. So let's continue on and look at some, but first I have to tell you, I will have my own 12-step program here to turn you into a daylily addict, such as I am. Let's look at this quickly. This is what I hope to cover. And this is to keep me focused, see, so I won't forget what I need to tell you. If you don't remember anything else that I say today, remember that website, daylillies.org. Now that's where your true experts live. You can find out anything you ever wanted to know about daylilies there. They have a huge database that if you have a question, and I know most of you are smartphone people, you can just get into that database if you're out buying daylilies and check how big is that daylily, what color is it, etc., etc. We're going to talk about how to prepare your garden bed, how to enrich your soil. Do you want to? Oh, this is a biggie. Visit display gardens to see what you like. And now, after you visit that display, you're ready to pick out your own favorite daylily. And you're a better man than I am if you can pick out just one daylily after you see how beautiful they are. We'll talk about how to plant them, how to care for them. Are you a deadheader or a live header? When do you want to divide your daylilies? Might you want to learn to hybridize your very own daylily? And any problems or pests involved? This 12 is a biggie too. You need to seek out the company of other daylily addicts, whether in Master Gardeners or at the Tennessee Valley Daylily Society. you know, when we're going through all this corona mess, that sort of messed up everybody's schedule a little bit. So we've had to cancel some meetings, but keep up with us on that TVDS. They have a Facebook page too, of course. Okay, this is going to count toward that prep work, that step one. We'll call this your prep work. I know you know what this daylily is. You've probably seen it numerous times. Its official name is Hemerocallis fulva. I sort of consider him the granddaddy of all of our present day daylilies. Back in my grandmother's time, they were called outhouse lilies. But we don't have outhouses much lately, thankfully. So what do we call them today? I think they're almost always called ditch lilies. Some people say roadside. But whatever you call them, they're wonderful plants, and do try them. They're so hardy. They'll hold a bank for you if you have a problem with erosion. And you've always got plenty to divide and give away, that's for sure. These are so special. I know I'm biased, but I'm going to think of them as the one that's mentioned in scripture. You know that verse, consider the lilies, how they grow. But I know I can't prove that. But when I was researching for this class to tell you, I did find them mentioned in ancient Chinese writings over 3,000 years ago, the source said. So they have been around a long time. And guess what they were used for? Medicine. They were mentioned in some kind of prescription, a medical regimen for the emperor, because they were good for stress and given to people in mourning. But their main purpose was as a food crop. Now, what do you think? Does that look like a delightful stir fry? I'm sure they're full of vitamin A, but so far I haven't been brave enough. I don't want to cut them up in my salad. I have a friend that says they taste great. So you try that for me and let me know if you like them. But I want to see those babies bloom. I'm not going to put them in my salad. Now here, keep in mind that my whole premise of this class is I want to make it easy when you go daylily shopping for you to make a mental checklist or even on paper, little traits that you like about daylilies. So that's why I've tried to pick some of my favorites from my garden. Do you like the solid colors? Do you like ruffles? This is a vibrant, beautiful yellow. Or do you prefer the kind with the eye-popping markings on them? The edging on the petals, there are just so many varieties to choose from. But before you go shopping, I just wanted to give you a chance to look at them and see which ones you really like. Now, I'm a sucker for this, the green throat. Let me see if I can be proficient. Thank you for letting me experiment on you this morning. Do you like these ruffles? Some have more ruffles, deeper ruffles. And you will want to realize we call these all petals, most of us do. But to the expert, these top three are known as petals, and the three underneath are known as sepals. Now, I know you won't remember all that, but when you look at your daylily catalog, you will hear these phrases. So that's what I'm after. It's just to make you have a passing knowledge. Because when I started, I didn't have anyone to ask about that. And we didn't have the internet. Well, we had the internet, but you know, we didn't use it like we do today. Let me backtrack a minute and tell you, if you're going to love daylilies in Chattanooga, you're going to hear the name Denver Scott. He loved baseball. He has an entire selection. I know there's 20, 25 different daylilies, and they're all named these wonderful baseball terms. Base hit, percentage play, catcher's mitt. So when you're out shopping, if you find one with a baseball name, it's probably going to be a Denver Scott hybrid. He is almost the patriarch of our daylily world here in Chattanooga. I think he was actually instrumental in beginning the Daylily Club. So you're going to hear his name frequently, probably. Um, and Lee Pickles, another local wonderful hybridizer. His daylilies are absolutely gorgeous. And both of these lovely gentlemen are not with us any longer, but actually Lee's wife, Jean, is a master gardener, so she's a good friend also. She has a beautiful garden. I love to visit other people's gardens. I learn something always, don't you? Now, I'm a sucker for the green throat. Anytime I look into the face, the throat of a daylily, and that deep, deep chartreuse green, I'm probably going to whip out the checkbook. That just wins me over. Now, when you go and look at daylilies, you're going to find some with huge blooms like this, or this is a reliable, lovely color, brightens up your garden. It's more like the little Stella. So you get your choice of those. You know, the little Stella d'Oro, every McDonald's has some of those, right? So you'll remember these names now: Denver Scott, Lee Pickles. These are a few of my favorites. And I love this one because this hybridizer, Jeff and Jackie Pryor, they've since moved to Texas, but they like to specialize. Uh, Jackie loved to breed the diploids, and Jeff, her husband, loved to work with the tetraploids. Now that's two more big words that you're just going to see in passing, and that's sort of over my pay grade. All I know is it has to do with the chromosomes. And I say that to, well, the hybridizers are just doing a marvelous job for us these days in improving the daylily choices that we have. And the chromosomes are doubled, is my understanding, in the tetraploids. But we, as ordinary daylily lovers, we don't need to worry about that. Now, this is about as scientific as I can get about daylilies. This drawing actually comes from that daylillies.org website. So you can go back and check on it anytime. Just a few brief facts. We talked about the petals and sepals. You know, I'm sure that daylily blooms only last one day, but yet they have so many. They just continue to open and bloom day after day after day. So that's not a deficit in my book. They're so beautiful. This seed pod, I always cut those off. Unless you're planning on trying to grow your daylilies from seed, which I have never tried, you won't even need that. And I see no sense in letting the plant give its strength to making this giant seed pod. So I cut those off when they start. But the main thing I wanted to show you, a term you'll need to know, this main stem here is called a scape. You'll hear that mentioned in all the literature. But this proliferation, now that, the only daylily I have that makes that little proliferation is this gorgeous yellow explosion. The substance of this petal, it just feels like velvet. It is so gorgeous. And the expert daylily judges, I think they use the term diamond dust. When you go into your garden, this flower actually looks like it's been sprinkled with diamonds. It's a lovely plant. And there again, it makes these wonderful, which everybody likes free plants, right? So after this scape is through blooming, you just cut the stem, stick it in a pot, and some people actually root it in water first. And voila, you're going to have a free daylily. We like that, right? This just pictures what the roots look like. I'm sure you're familiar with that. When we think about the crown, like most plants, they're going to tell us that the crown needs to be buried only about an inch. You don't have to bury them real deep. Now, I'm not going to even dwell over the stamen, the pollen, the pistil. That's so far over my pay grade. Unless you're going to learn to be a hybridizer, which you may very well do later after you fall in love with daylilies. A lot of our club members hybridize their own, and some even have registered daylilies. So those club members have a wealth of information. Just like you go to Master Gardeners, you can go to the daylily folks to learn anything you need to know just about daylilies. Oh, I put this one in here, a rabbit trail off to the side. I've only had 2 gardens. I was a late bloomer, and forgive me for telling you my personal story, but every gardener has a story. So my kids were grown and gone before I fell in love with gardening and took I was in Tom's first class. That's my claim to fame, back in 2005. When we decided to move from Red Bank to Hickson, a wonderful Master Gardener friend helped me divide my daylilies, and I ordered the big 3-gallon buckets from eBay. And with that and a few hostas, there was probably close to 100. So when we moved to this Hickson house, I was not prepared for the rocky chert that was in this yard. So I knew I would never get those daylilies planted, probably for years. So my answer to this, I had plenty of time to make a lasagna garden bed. And we had this delightful lady be one of our speakers at our expo a couple of years ago, and I had already known her for years. A lasagna garden bed is so easy, and I want you to try it. I know we usually want to instantly make a garden, but if you have a spot you want to improve, this really works. All you do is spread down newspaper, cover it with mulch, grass clippings, your mulched up leaves, whatever. And the next spring, oh, that is so fine. It's a wonderful garden spot. So that's a little free tip that's good for daylilies or anything else. Do try it. We love to share our tips, don't we, with each other? Now, daylilies are not fussy. What do they require? Like any other plant, you want to think about the soil you give them, how much sunshine they get, how much water they get. That's easy, like any other plant. But where the rubber meets the road is how much of each, right? Daylilies are not fussy. They will try to bloom for you no matter what kind of soil you put them in, all the way from sand even to pure clay almost. But yet, the other side of the coin is they do respond to any of those extra little touches of loving care that you give them. Now, every gardener has their favorite mixture of soil. And if you've got terrible clay, like most of us have here in Chattanooga, you're going to want surely to add some amendments to the soil. You can get it tested. I don't know that we're actively doing that now, but always try to do that. Get your soil tested. But when you want to get something in the ground right now, I recommend you add some amendments to that terrible clay. So you break up the soil, and my favorite mixture, keeping it very simple, everybody has their own favorite mix. I can't afford that Miracle Grow potting soil, so I use the Lowe's house brand, a big bag of that, and a big bag of compost with a little manure thrown in. But now this year they have got compost with the manure already in it, so I'm going to try that this year. So we always are experimenting, trying to improve our garden, right? But they do respond to any little TLC you give them. So you just break up your soil, make sure it's pliable, flexible. I can't think of the right word now, but when you buy a daylily at Home Depot or Lowe's, it's going to be in a pot, just like any other plant. So that's easy to plant, easy, easy. But when you make your first order from a daylily grower, they're going to come bare root like this. I know when I ordered my first big order from Denver Scott, he had about 4 or 5 of these bound together and counted them as one plant. So this is sort of a baby, but it's a good illustration to show you how easy they are to plant. Now, if they're bigger, you would make your hole and put what I call a little volcano mound in the bottom of it and just set those roots down on top of that mound. Easy peasy, so easy to plant. And you don't have to stomp them, tap them in, just water them in good to get rid of the air spaces, and you're good to go. Now let's think about the sun for a minute. My cousin made this picture when she came to visit my garden, which I thought was rather strange, but now I'm so glad she did because I can share it with you. At my old house, this was the kind of garden I had. It's certainly not full sun, is it? But all of our authorities tell us that daylilies need full sun, which amounts to 6 hours a day at least. And I don't think there's any way you would call this full sun. But I put all this in here just to show you that they're such a resilient plant. I had this garden and I wanted daylilies. And so I just proceeded to buy them and add them like I knew what I was doing. And this was the garden at the old house. Now, I loved this garden and hated so to leave it. We moved to Hickson. My husband wanted to be closer to his doctors at North Park. So that was a good reason. And two, we were getting older and we needed a simpler garden. But oh, we love this garden. And like most beginning gardeners, what do? If you've got a tree, you start planting something around that tree. It makes you feel good, doesn't it? Just like it's settled in. Now this wonderful oak tree, I wanted to show you here. We had another oak tree, just that big. The lightning split it. We had to have it taken out. And there was a huge pine tree in this garden. So when I started, it certainly was not full sun. But I wasn't sad to lose those trees because it just gave me more room for daylilies, right? Now, remember this plant, if you like reds, this one is named Red Volunteer. And yes, that's right. It's quite common in our area and grows well. It's quite popular. So we go with the garden we're dealt, right? And sometimes we have to push the envelope, but daylilies are so forgiving. I urge you to give them a try. Now about water, we have the typical inch a week that we know about all of our plants love, but daylilies are so tolerant of drought. Once they're settled in, a year old, I never worry about them. Like the drought we had last summer, I think they're going to do fine and come back this year. But now here's the rebuttal on this. They love water. So if you love blooms on your daylilies, remember to give them extra water, especially in May when they're starting to form their buds, and certainly in June when they're beginning to bloom. You would want to water them from the bottom. I don't spray the blooms because sometimes that will do something to make it hard for them to open up the next day. But I water mine the front yard one day and the back the next day. In June, I do that because they appreciate all that extra water. Let's see. Oh, yes. More beautiful blooms. As you're thinking about your mental checklist, we're back to that. This one is known as Primal Scream, and it does just that. When you go into your garden, it just screams out at you. Come and look at me. It's a beautiful flower. So do you like the eye-popping colors? Do you like the ones with the edging on the petals? And the experts call this the eye zone. You'll see that contrast usually matches the edging. And here we've got my green throat that I love. So you know I had to buy that one. Always Afternoon is another popular one you'll see a lot. Now, all of these are stout medal winners, which wouldn't mean a thing to you, but as a beginner, my logic was whether it's a hosta or daylily or what, if I choose a plant, and because it is a medal winner, which is the highest daylily honor, the stout medal, it's certainly going to be adequate in my garden. I know it's a proven commodity, and maybe as a beginner, I couldn't kill it, you know. So that's my logic. So I'm just passing that on in case you want to try that. Now, this one is a beauty also. See this mid-rib? That's another characteristic. You may love that. It gives it a great appearance. The substance of these petals is absolutely gorgeous. Looks like velvet. Now, these two across the top, I bet you can guess, they're called doubles, right? For some reason, their chromosomes, you're going to see when you go shopping, there are some doubles out there. You'll notice they have the petals, the sepals, but their chromosomes decide they need to give you that little extra bit of fluff in the middle, and they are just gorgeous. And another tip is sometimes they're double, and sometimes the blooms won't double. So it's like a happy surprise when you go out there. And these two, I actually won these as a door prize at the Daylily meeting. So they're extra special to me. You know, they're sort of like your pet or your children. You learn their personality, how they grow. Now this Rocky Dale Amy was hybridized by a lady that lives on Sickle Mountain. And she doesn't even try to sell them. She just does it for the joy, the love of daylilies. And I was lucky enough to win this plant, and it is beautiful. Now the bottom two, look at those with me. You may or may not think you like spiders. For years, I didn't like them. I thought I didn't. But once I broke down and bought this beautiful, easy Ned, it's like he just waves at me. When I go out in the garden, those extra long petals, because he's about 40, well, it comes chest high almost. And this bloom is actually 6 or 7 inches across. So see, you've got all kinds of flowers to choose from. So do try one of the spiders. Don't wait so long like I did, because I love them. And of course, you know, this one has Peggy in the name. Obviously, I had to buy that one. And she's another beauty that I love. Let's see, just a few more for you to look at the different traits. See, here's a beautiful solid color. See, the eye zone on this lily is not nearly as pronounced, different. It has a very calm, tranquil look. Oh, and your experts. Now, this little fella, I've got him in too much shade. He would be bigger. But the experts call this a bitone. So when you're looking at your daylily catalog, I know you won't remember what I say today, but you will remember it when you need it. You'll say, oh yes, I remember that lady talking about this. A bitone is one that the petals and the sepals are an entirely different color. So you may want to choose one of those. Now this one's called an unusual form in the daylily judging. But see, you're going to have so many choices to make. That's why I want you to make your little checklist before you go shopping, because you need to know, what do you really like? Don't do like I did, just go to the display garden, and I was like a kid in a candy store. I'd just run from one daylily to the next. Oh, this one's so pretty, this one's so pretty. So I'm just sharing with you what I wish I had known when I first started shopping. This unusual form is absolutely gorgeous. It's a fairly big bloom, and you can tell the substance of the petal is very substantial, smooth, and the petal is actually so long that it recurves. I think that's the term the judges use. I'm just self-taught. I'm sharing with you what little I have learned from studying the Daylily catalogs. And you're going to get familiar, if you become an addict, which I'm hoping you will be, the hybridizers. You will find out which one that you always love their flowers. Now, like this gentleman begins his cultivars with the word Top Guns. Well, I know I love his flowers, so I'll give a second look to any of those. But the reason I put this slide in here is when you go shopping at the display garden and you look for one that has all these buds around this, when I see that many buds on a plant, I'm probably going to buy it. I don't care what color it is, because that's like one of God's little miracles that if you read in your catalog, let me see how to say this, that a daylily has 3-way branching, 5-way branching. Oh, that's good. I always look for that. That means each scape has at the top about 5 of those little branches. And then the catalog will actually tell you how many buds will be on that branch. So I always look for one. If it says it has 23, 28 bud count, that's a zinger in my book. So look for that. That's something else to remember. But when you go shopping, you won't have any trouble singling these out that have the bud count that high. Oh, I put this one in here. This is from my Master Gardener friend, George Ganaway. I did that to remind me to tell you these facts about your catalog when you look. Now, George has got a Cadillac label here. As beginners, we don't have to be that elaborate. My beginning tip, which I hope there are a lot of you beginning daylily lovers out there, you can use anything from a wooden popsicle stick to my favorite cheap method is buy an old mini blind at Goodwill or even the dollar store and throw away all the strings and keep all the slats, and you've got enough to make you hundreds of labels. And you just cut them however long, however you need it to be to go down in the side of the pot and write the name of your daylilies. Oh, please, please start out if you're a collector. Keep the names of your plants. You will be so happy you did that. And your visitors, when they come to visit you, that's the first thing they ask you, isn't it? What's the name of this flower? So you want to be sure you know. Now, we think we'll remember. I've been down this road. But next year, when you go out and try to remember, like if you bought 3 daylilies, you wouldn't be sure, if you're like me, which one's which. So the time to label your plants is when you first put them in the ground, even if it's just a little temporary thing until you can purchase a better label. But now this, George has everything on this label like you would see in a catalog. That's what I call the Cadillac label. But it tells you, and your catalog will look just like this. It tells you the name, the color of the plant, that it has a violet eye zone. You know, daylily catalogs, they believe in those acronyms. So that's why I wanted you to get comfortable with that with me. But the biggie to me is that they tell you exactly how large the bloom is and how tall the scape is. I find this interesting too. But of course, when I fall in love with a daylily, I don't really bother to look it up. I just know I love that daylily. But this abbreviation tells you EE would stand for extra early. EM would be extra to midway of the blooming season. We get on down to late and VL for very late. Now, when I see a VL, I most generally will give it a second look because I love to extend the bloom season. Here in our area, you're going to have your peak season. I always tell my visitors around Father's Day. a week before and a week after is sort of the peak. For me, it is anyway. So if you go to visit a person's daylily garden, you'll want to aim for Father's Day. This means rebloom. Now we love those blooms, so we love to buy one that's going to give you a second flush of bloom, some even a third. Now this last abbreviation I think is so interesting. It stands for evergreen. You'll see evergreen, semi-evergreen, and dormant, which is fascinating to me. Now, it doesn't really matter for us. We're in a wonderful climate zone here in the middle, but just think about the people that love daylilies in Florida. They want to be sure they don't purchase a daylily that needs that dormant cold weather because it wants to rest and go to. And then our friends in Michigan, they would sort of do the opposite. They like one that wants to go dormant, right? That's an interesting tidbit, but we're so lucky. We don't really have to go by that here in Tennessee. Oh, and we're down to my favorite, visit a display garden. Now, I love buying daylilies at Holcomb's, the barn, when we had a Holcomb's. You have Home Depot, Lowe's, all that. But there is nothing like, please, oh please, go visit a display garden where you can see these lovely flowers in mass. And that will give you a feel for what it would really look like in your yard. It's hard to tell that, isn't it, when you're just looking at one little plant at Home Depot, and it's got one little scape and hopefully one little bloom. But so do yourself a favor, take time to go visit this before you start purchasing a lot of your choices. Now I'm going to tell you about these 3 places. There's probably lots more that I do not know about in this area, but these are 3 people that I have purchased from and dealt with, and they have beautiful gardens. I'm sure you've heard of Sunshine Hollow up there at the Riceville exit 42, and it's quite a ways back in, and they do have a small charge to see their garden, but they almost always, they have a lunch, a place to eat lunch, so you can make a good outing of it. Then if you want to go further up I-75 north, Oaks is a place to visit. It's like heaven to me to go. I still remember the first day that I saw that beautiful display garden. It was a game changer for me in my life. They're just on the other side of Knoxville. And of course, you don't depend on my puny directions. I know this is just for your guesstimate. We were not smartphone users, so it was always my job to be the co-pilot. And I remember the time I messed up and let us miss this exit. We were raised in Knoxville, and I've had to go visit the Knoxville Zoo almost to get turned around and get back to where I wanted to go. So you check all these directions on their Facebook page, etc., etc. This is just a brief overview. But now if you want to go a closer place, go I-75 south. Bethlehem Gardens is a lovely place to go visit. My friend Ruby Reimer has a lovely garden. You get a double whammy there. She has a big daylily garden and the hosta garden. So I know if you've been to Prater's Mill, you'll be familiar with this exit. So she's easy to find, just about 4 miles down this after you take this exit. But as I say, they all have Facebook pages and they're easy to find. Just call them. But last but not least, certainly, you want to come and visit us one day. Right now, with all the confusion, we've had to cancel so many of our meetings, just like in Master Gardeners. So we're sort of like, who's on first, you know? Normally, the Daylily Club would have a big show at the barn in June, and we've had to cancel that. But keep up with us on Facebook. I bet if you had a question and put it on that Facebook page, some of the members, the more knowledgeable ones, lots of them have big gardens and they hybridize and they sell daylilies. So somebody on that page is going to know the answer to your question. Let's see, what else? In closing, now this page is a do as I say and not as I do page. I'm terrible about dividing mine, even when I was able. Now I have to get my son to help me. But this is my method for dividing. While I'm gathering up my tools, etc., I'll put the clump into soak in some a weak solution of root starter, Miracle Grow, whatever. The reason I do that is because you can separate all those fibrous roots by hand. And you get just tons. Just look how many new plants you could get out of that big clump. Because like I say, I'm bad to wait too long. Now I didn't have a choice with this one. You can see these garlic chives. They decided to live in the middle of the daylily clump. So there was no way to get rid of that garlic chives, which I should have confined it to a pot. I know that now. We learn by our mistakes, right, as gardeners. So the only way to get that chives out of there was to divide the entire clump. But when you get hot and tired and want to go to the house, you just get out your pruning shears and start whacking on that clump. Now you won't get as many daylilies, obviously, but the daylilies are so forgiving. They won't mind. Stick those in a pot and they will grow like crazy. Now here's our 12 steps again. Let's see how we've done. This is to tell me what I've forgotten and maybe trigger a question if you want to ask. I think I covered all of those. Biggie, visit the display garden. Then you're ready to pick your own favorite daylily. And I hope you will fall in love with daylilies with me. How to plant them, we talked about that. How to care for them. Did I mention deadheading? I don't think I did. You can decide which method you prefer, or really, I used both. You know, we talked about each bloom only lasts a day, right? So when you go out in your garden in the morning, you see those spent blooms and you just remove them carefully. Now, people that have tons of daylilies obviously don't have time to do that. But for my personal garden, I just love the look it gives in the early morning when you go out there to enjoy your garden. It takes me about an hour though, but it's a delightful hour. And you remove that spent bloom, and one reason I love to do it, sometimes it will get trapped over tomorrow's bud, and then it will, mess it up, how it begins to open. But now, if you're going to have a big tour of your garden or having a big family get together the next day, this is hard for me, but some people prefer to live head. And that means you go out. I wait till the sun's gone down to get away from the heat. And you just walk through your garden and break off every single bloom. And mentally, that's traumatic to me, to tear off that beautiful bloom when it's still so vibrant and beautiful. But the trade-off is the next morning you get up and your garden is pristine and looks absolutely glorious, and you're ready for company to walk through your garden. So like everything else, that's your choice. You're the gardener. You choose what you want to do. We talked about dividing them. Oh, and we didn't talk much about hybridizing. There are many of the club members that have done that and have registered their own daylilies. So there are plenty of sources of information about that. But as I said, that's sort of over my pay grade. I went to visit one of the daylily ladies early on in my experience, and she was getting ready to collect pollen that day. She came out with this wonderful contraption strapped around her waist, full of glass test tubes. She went around gathering that pollen. She capped the test tube, labeled it. And so the idea I finally figured out, she's collecting that pollen to deal with later. The hybridizers actually can freeze that pollen and then wait till next winter in their greenhouse. So see, that's another whole elaborate gardening setup. Like I say, it's way over my pay grade, but I'm sure it's wonderful if you so choose to try that. I always forget to talk about problems because there are so few. A few years back, we had a big brouhaha about rust. You don't hear much about that anymore because most of your reputable growers have a spray program that they just prevent that from happening. But I've never really had any problems with my daylilies, with the bugs or anything that I know of. The main pest I have is voles. And you know, as gardeners, we just learn to deal with whatever the persistent problem is. Now, I never saw a vole until I started making those wonderful garden beds. But when you create that soft atmosphere that they love to tunnel through, I literally have watched one suck one of my daylilies down into his tunnel and watched him chomp on it, and it gradually disappeared. But I'm committed. That's the fight I'm going to make with him. There's one bed and only one bed where they love, I call it the vole condominium. So we just learn to deal with it. You know, we're gardeners, we're resilient and press on. But that's the only problem I've ever had is voles. And the last item, of course, I hope you will seek out the company of other addicts like myself, because being a daylily addict is a wonderful addiction. It's nothing bad about it at all. And again, we have that TVDS has a page on Facebook for you to check. Now, this is my attempt at a beautiful ending of my presentation. If you live in Tennessee, you need this daylily. It's not the old ditch lily. It's a vibrant orange balls that's created by that Oaks family in Knoxville, of course, home of the balls. I had to have a whole row of these at the old house for my hubby. He was a big balls fan. So I hope you will join me in buying this daylily. It's certainly a keeper. But now if you're a Georgia or Alabama fan, I can't help you. You're going to have to find your own daylily to celebrate that team. But I guess I feel like that I hope I haven't bored you, that I've told you everything my brain can possibly hold about daylilies that I know and love. So Tom, I'm going to turn the meeting over. It's Beverly is going to be my host here, right?
That'll be fun, Peggy. You've done an awesome job. Yay.
Yeah, very good.
Awesome. I do want to pass along a few questions. I've answered a few. One had to do with deadheading and making sure the flower, it's just right where the flower attaches to the stem at the base, correct? Is where you remove it.
Correct, that is, and it snaps off. Some of them will be easier than others, and I get aggravated with myself. You need to do that carefully because I get so upset when I knock off the bud.
Yeah, exactly. Another question I also just answered, but you can say, if you leave them in some pots, there's no need to bring the pot in the wintertime. Correct?
Not. Yes.
Correct. Okay. Another question was interplanting. So for instance, irises, things that are earlier season, is it fine to interplant with daylilies?
Yes, yes, definitely. And that's the whole point I love about them. They contribute to your overall garden scheme. I'm not one, you know, when they recommend full sun, you know, I don't have a big field where I can just plunk down a bunch of daylilies in the hot sun. So they have to contribute to my overall garden design. And they do that beautifully, that's for sure.
Wonderful. Those were the ones typed in the chat. If anyone has another question, you can unmute yourself
I have
carefully.
one from the Facebook page.
Okay, yes, Suzanne.
When is a good time to fertilize your daylilies, if you fertilize?
A lot of people don't bother with it, and I didn't for years. But since, as I told you, I'm guilty of letting mine get overcrowded, they need dividing. I actually went out with my cane this year and slowly spread 10, 10, 10 around, not in the plant itself, but just each one encircle that with a cup, half a cup of 10, 10, 10. And I'm going to see if it makes a big difference. But that's one of those TLC, tender loving care touches that I'm trying this year. And
Would you do it in the spring, or would you do it in the spring as they start to sprout up?
Some people do it. I did it in March.
Okay.
Getting ready to wake up and start forming those buds. And then some growers say they give them another dose in late September, just to encourage root growth, before they go into winter.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Anything else?
Any more questions?
Yeah, one more. Is compost okay for fertilizer, or do you think that's too much?
Oh, I think that would be great. They'd appreciate it. Your homemade compost is not going to be rich enough, I wouldn't think, to ever burn them.
I'm going to stop the recording. Let's see.